Jazz Camp West needs no introduction. So that's all the video footage I recorded at Jazz Camp this year. I was too busy taking it in for the most part, which I guess is for the best. Well, for me, if not necessarily for this video. But I've already made a million vlogs about previous jazz camps, and hopefully they show why I think it's one of the best things in the world. But first I'll just go through what classes I took this year. So something that happens every Jazz Camp West is you get the class schedule, and the two classes you most want to take happen during the same period. One of those cases this year was during second period, where Ulysses Owens Jr., who was this year's artist in residence, had a class with a very open-ended name, Plat du Jour. But what I ended up taking was Terrence Brewer's class on the history of Black American pop music, which, because I didn't take a class during first period, campers are generally discouraged from filling up all 6 periods of their schedule. So I took first period off, and then I had this nice, relaxed, not playing, just talking class, where we went from basically the roots of jazz, like blues and ragtime, all the way to early jazz, and then we finished with Motown and a little bit of hip hop. And then for third period, I took Julie Wolf's class on playing with singer-songwriters. One of my main regrets for this year is not taking any of Dawn Clement's classes. I think she was teaching one at the same time. Not only because she was the most badass player on the faculty this year. I mean, she had a bit of competition, but no, I think she was the most. But apparently she has a superpower that I didn't know existed, which is she's apparently, I have yet to witness this firsthand, but apparently she can teach multiple levels at once. As I said, it's a skill I didn't know existed. But anyway, in Julie's class on playing with singer-songwriters, as much as I love that class, I could see how a skill like that could come in handy, because on the one hand, I have a fair bit of experience playing with singer-songwriters, so as much as I loved exploring the differences between, say, Katie Dahl and Ani DeFranco in the way that they write songs, the class was also rehashing a lot of stuff I already knew, whereas some of the more beginner campers didn't always get the questions they had answered. I did skip that class once to listen to the Piano Intensive do their recital on the second to last day. Apparently a lot of us in that class skipped that particular day, which was really good for the more beginner campers who were there. Basically what I'm saying is Dawn Clement is a superhero. And then for fourth period after lunch, I took the music of Moacir Santos, taught by one of the many pillars of Jazz Camp West, Jovino Santos Neto, no relation, as far as I know. Of course, it was fun exploring the music of another Brazilian composer I had no idea previously about. There were a couple other piano campers in that class, so I played a lot of melodica so we could take turns with the piano. Jovino actually, on the last day, Jovino called by playing a one-man horn section, which really means a lot to me considering he's the guy who inspired me to get a melodica in the first place. And then after that, I took Canta Brazil with Sandy Cressman, yet another pillar of Jazz Camp, and probably the greatest living foreign interpreter of Brazilian music. It was a singing class, but we were accompanied on piano by the inimitable Walter Bankovic. Although when we performed at Ohlone Bowl, which is one of the big highlights of Jazz Camp, this is actually the first Ohlone Bowl I performed at in all my 10 or so years of coming. So instead of singing, I played melodica when we performed at Ohlone Bowl. We sang a tune called No Deixe o Samba Morrer, Don't Let Samba Die, and we had a few other campers who were dancing the samba in front of us. And there was a slightly funny thing that happened while we were doing that song, which was that the stage was a little bit narrower than it looked from just being in the audience. Certainly narrow enough that we couldn't all just stand in a straight line on it, so I stood a little bit in front. At the time, I thought that was the only cause of the incident, but apparently it's nobody's fault, because apparently the dancers hadn't tried dancing in that formation before. The point is, it was nobody's fault. I happened to be right behind Natalie Cressman, yet another pillar of Jazz Camp, half the trombone faculty this year. At the time, I thought this was because I had stood a little too close behind her, and her hand accidentally hit my melodica once while we danced. I mean, we both continued on because we're both professionals, but the funny part is I relayed that story to the class the next day, the Canta Brazil class, and I referred to Natalie Cressman by her first name only, because, I mean, who at Jazz Camp would hear the name Natalie and think of anyone else? I mean, this is this is her mom's class I'm talking to. But what I'd forgotten was that there was another Natalie in that class. So when I said the name Natalie, she thought I was talking about her. And she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I had to explain that I wasn't talking about her, which got me thinking. Imagine the chaos that would ensue if we had a camper named Jovino. And then I finished up with a perennial favorite of mine, reimagining iconic songs of the 70s and 80s, taught by Julie Wolfe, although this year she co-taught with Coffee Brown. Also, unofficially, Vicki Randall, as you can see from that clip of Proud Mary. On that day, we had gotten a noise complaint from a nearby guitar class, which shows you how loud we'd been the previous days. If all of us non-guitarists could drown out an army of guitarists, you know we're loud. So I promised myself I wouldn't make myself go to the late night Gold's Gulch Jam until Wednesday after Ohlone Bowl had happened. But I ended up going on Tuesday night instead. And that was the only Gold's Gulch Jam I ended up going to this year. Funnily enough, it was after the only dining hall jam I ended up going to this year, the Funk Jam. At the Funk Jam, another mini highlight of the year for me happened. As soon as I sat in on keys, the first number we did was Ain't Nobody by Rufus. And as soon as I played the opening riff, the crowd just went wild. And that's probably the fastest I've ever been able to make that many people scream. So that was a definite highlight for me. As much as I'm trying to make this video comprehensive, it's not gonna be. But another thing I remembered about this year is that attendance was much higher this year. We had over 300 campers, including about 100 first-timers, which was a huge turnaround from last year where we were slightly under capacity. I didn't notice until it was pointed out to me. But this year we actually had a tap dancer camper. His name is Tommy Wazuda, and while I didn't meet him myself, I hope to next year, but I overheard him saying that he didn't actually take any dance classes himself, which makes sense because the dance classes are salsa and contemporary jazz and hip-hop. As a tap dancer, you're really a percussionist. So one of the highlights of Ohlone Bowl was that he did a bit of double drums and tap duel with Allison Miller, our artistic director, and Ulysses Owens Jr. I hope to see him on the faculty someday, almost as much as I hope to be on the faculty myself one day. A few more faculty members of note that I haven't mentioned yet. We had Marina Lavalle this year. Like Moacir Santos, someone I had no previous knowledge of, but I sort of knew from the moment she opened her mouth that, you know, she was an absolute legend. I don't know the exact details, but she's a legend in Afro-Peruvian music. Also this year we had 3/4 of Sage. As it happens, Don Clement is playing keyboards on their upcoming debut album. Apparently we would have had all 4 of them, but one of them was on tour with Jacob Collier, which begs the question, could we not have had instead all of Sage plus Jacob? So one tiny regret of mine this year is that I didn't get to do an open mic, but that is completely out of anyone's control because the selection process for the open mic is a lottery and you have to enter every day, and I entered every day except the first day, but I didn't get picked. This isn't the first time that's happened, and I did get to be in someone's open mic. And then the day after Jazz Camp, Allison Miller did a show at Piedmont Piano Company, which is the place that donates all of the pianos to Jazz Camp, and her band there was faculty this year. In fact, she played a tune that she had finished writing and premiered at Jazz Camp called Papa the Man, the Myth, the Legend. It was a tribute to her extremely recently passed father, so I'm not surprised that she finished it at Jazz Camp. And after the gig, a lot of us, I think like a quarter of us who were there, went to a nearby Mexican restaurant for a little dinner after party. And I think I talked to most of the people who were there and pretended to be a social butterfly. By the way, I remember in last year's vlog I said I'd upload my open mic performance from then, but I thought at the time that I had bought it like when I was at Jazz Camp, and then a few months later I realized I hadn't, and I think it was too late to get it downloaded online or something. The point is, I don't know where it is. Also, I kind of wish my bandmates could have been there. I think they would have gotten almost as much out of it as me. Yeah, I'm in a band now. It's called Black Market Blues. While I'm filling you in on my career at this point, I'm also in the early stages of writing a concept album based on Avatar: The Last Airbender. But yeah, I think that about does it for my story of Jazz Camp West 2023. So if you're interested in going, it's 1 week in the middle of June. And if you're on the fence about going, just sign up. So I'll see you there next year. And until then,
if you stay really quiet at night, you might hear the distant howl of the remnants of Trombonia.
stay dangerous.